Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was he a real prophet? How do we go about this? So first we have to establish, for people who are most likely, if they don't believe in prophets, they're most likely atheists. So we have to establish if it's rational that God does exist, and that it's rational that he would communicate with his creation. So on my previous videos, I covered those, so we're going to skip that, and we're going to go straight into prophethood. For one, we've established that God, creator, would communicate with mankind to guide them in some sort of way, that this is very rational. So how would he do this? The best way would to send or to bring about a righteous person who could guide his people, his certain people, and they could look up to him for guidance, and he could teach them the revelation from God. So this is why prophets were sent for their people in their time throughout all of history, which leads up to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. For those other prophets, we can't really go back and analyze what they said besides what the Quran, of course, because it's Allah's word. But besides that, we can't go back and analyze their claims. Were they truthful? Were they not? We believe it because the Quran says so. But why do we believe the Quran? But because of the one who came and claimed that this is from God. And who was that? That was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So we can test his claim. Why? Because we have a science behind what he said. We know he existed. We know a lot of things he said based on the science of hadith, where we have chains of narrations and eyewitnesses who were there when he said these things, and copied them and memorized them and passed them through time, through generations, in a very specific Scientology kind of way, where we know the names of the people who saw him say these things, and they're not just one but many people. So we know what he said, and now we can go back and analyze, was he being truthful, what kind of person was he, and all this. Because if someone's going to be a prophet from God, obviously they're going to have to be a righteous person. They're going to have to be a person who is very truthful and of good character, right? Of course. So was he telling the truth? Well, first let's analyze the options and what was his claim. The claim of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was that he was receiving revelation from the angel Gabriel, from God, to the angel Gabriel to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the cave. And this was going on for 23 years. He received revelation in various different ways. So how do we establish if he was telling the truth or not? Well, we have to establish first the other options. The other options are he was lying, he didn't really see an angel, he just made this all up, or he was crazy, he thought he saw an angel, but it really wasn't. He was just kind of just thinking it was true, but it wasn't. Or he was delusional, or the Christians like to claim that it was Satan that was in the cave and deceiving him into believing that it was an angel, and he actually thought he was receiving revelation from God, but really it was a devil. Okay, so we have to analyze all those. For one, with the devil claim, it's so irrational, because what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was preaching, and what the Quran says from Allah is just totally goes against what Satan would say. Satan wouldn't want people to stop drinking. He wouldn't want people to stop worshipping idols, and the people at that time in Arabia were doing these things. They were just atrocious people. They were far away from God. They were worshipping idols and all this. So it wouldn't make sense for the devil to come to these kind of people and tell them to worship God alone, which is the total opposite of what Satan would want and do. If anything, if the Christians are going to claim this, why wouldn't he come to a Christian community who are supposedly upright and righteous and try to deceive them, right? So that doesn't make sense. We could dismiss that. Was he crazy? There's no evidence that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was crazy. There are many incidences where he could have gone with his prophethood. People were, once his son Ibrahim died, there was an eclipse on that same day. People were like, look, that you must be a prophet. There's an eclipse, his son died, and all this, and all the prophet, peace be upon him, had to do was agree and say, oh yeah, see, look, I'm a prophet, you know. And that's what a crazy person would have done. But he said, no, this doesn't happen for anyone. That's not because I'm a prophet or anything. So shows the humbleness, but also that he wasn't crazy. Like, he didn't have to go out and lie about things to make him seem like he was a prophet. No, he didn't have to do that because he was, right? It doesn't make any sense when you go through that route. So let's go through lying. Did he lie? For one, you need motivation to lie. What would be the motivation of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to lie? A lot of people say power, money, a woman, but first you have to establish he lost so much by preaching. You know, there was people, you know, they made a lot of money from worshiping these idols, and that were coming in and to Mecca, and he came out there and said, no, worship only one God. And because of this, they went through a boycott where the Muslims, believers, were cut off for some society. They weren't able to trade and all these things, and they suffered so much for many years, for 10 or more years. People died because of this, and it's all because he was preaching to worship only one God. So if he was lying, he could have just stopped it there and to help his people, but no, he knew it was true, so he kept going. Now, what did they do at this time? After his uncle Abu Talib died, they went to him and they said, look, you should stop this now. If you do, you can be the king, you can have all these women, money. So they offered him all these things, and he denied it because of this message. If you were lying, if you were crazy, of course you would accept these things, right? But no, he did not accept it because he knew how important this mission was, and that his revelation was from God, and that eventually they would come back and take over Mecca, right? He knew that. That's not a person that was lying or anything. Also, we established his character. He was known as the truthful one even before he was receiving revelation. He was known as Al-Amin, the truthful. And this is by his enemies too, not just the ones who believed in him, but these are enemies who called him the truthful one, Al-Amin. And he would take people's treasures and protect them at his house and all these things, and he would give it back when they needed it. This is an honest, trustful person, and they all knew that, right? This is why he was chosen, right? And this was up until he was 40 years old before he received the prophethood. And once he received it, once he was supposed to preach to the people, he went up to a cliff, and he brought all the people in the city over, and he told them, yeah, would you believe me if I told you there was an army behind this cliff? And they said, yes, of course, you're the truthful one. And then he said, well, would you believe me? And he started preaching, and they said no, and they threw rocks at him or whatnot. So it just shows that they would have believed him with anything. But once he started preaching that they need to abandon their idols, they couldn't accept that. So it just shows what kind of person he was. He couldn't have lied, and then the only option now is that he must have been telling the truth. And if he was telling the truth, and he was receiving revelation, then the Quran is from God, and you must follow, and you must become a Muslim. And that's just the way it is, whether you like it or not. This is God's revelation to mankind. Pick it up, read it, inshallah, and you will realize this is the ultimate guidance. That even if you read the Quran itself, you know there's no way the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, could have made this up. There's no way any man could have made this up. It has to be divine revelation. As-salamu alaikum. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for other episodes. Share, like, comment, subscribe.